All right. All right, everyone. Thank you and welcome for joining. Thank you, our panelists. Thank you for our attendees. We're so glad you could join us today. My name is John Wayne, and I'm the Director of Community Growth here at Unite Us. If you're new to our community, welcome. Unite Us connects health and social care, helping organizations like yours better support people by making it easier to coordinate care, track outcomes, and prove impact. At Unite Us, we deeply value the work of nonprofits and understand the daily challenges you face. This commitment stems from my personal journey and fuels our mission to support your work. This is my first webinar I'm doing. I've been here for about 2 months, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. This is my opportunity for that. My story is rooted in war, displacement, and resilience. My mother, the eldest of 17, met my father in Vietnam. They arrived in North Carolina in 1973, and starting over was incredibly difficult. My mother faced language barriers in an unfamiliar system, and soon after I was born, and we were abandoned and homeless. It was a difficult time, but we weren't alone. A local church and other community organizations stepped in, provided food, shelter, clothing, and transportation. Strangers, strangers helped us, and through that experience, we learned the profound power of community. And that support gave us hope, love, and a sense of connection that inspires my work today. That experience is the foundation of my work at Unite Us, and it's why we're here today. This webinar is to explore how AI can be helpful, an accessible tool for your work. Imagine the community that supported and helped my family, amplified by smart, efficient tools. AI to me isn't intimidating. It's a means to coordinate care, streamline processes, and free up your time to focus on human connection. Unite Us provides software that helps you securely refer clients to services, track outcomes, and collaborate across sectors, all in one shared system. So if you'd like to learn more after this webinar and how we partner with nonprofits, we'd love to connect. This session is specifically designed for nonprofits curious about AI and unsure where to start. You don't need to have a technical background. You don't need to have a lot of a big budget. And so we're going to talk and dive deeper into this today. Our speakers will share real world examples, uh, free and low cost tools and tips for using AI responsibly and ethically. We're joined by some incredible leaders doing innovative work at the intersection of community, tech, and social impact. I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself, your name, title, organization, and how about the latest AI benefit you've discovered? Rachel, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I'm Rachel Kimber. I am founder of Full Circle Impact Solutions, and I have spent my career working at the intersection of nonprofit and philanthropy. And so helping folks understand how people, process, and tools can fuel our impact is what I enjoy doing. Process being steeped in equity, collaboration, and participation, inclusion, accessibility. All of these words matter a lot to me as we build processes that are often digital and rely on tech infrastructure. And so I am here today to start weaving together how we use these tools to drive impact. One of the ways I do that, and there's always trade-off, right? Trade-off is part of any conversation in making decisions. There's reasons to do it, reasons not to do it. And so when I use AI, it's to facilitate my ability to drive impact. What that looks like using Gamma to develop slide deck presentations. So when I have to go and share information and I need it supported by some visuals, I find my way to the Gamma tool that helps me develop presentations really quickly and is really easy to use. Encourage you to check it out.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. How about you, Susan?
Hey, I'm Susan Tenby. I'm the Director of Global Community. Oh, that was my previous title. Community Partnerships now at TechSoup. And so what that means right now is I work at the intersection of online community, on the ground community being events, helping nonprofits understand how to connect with each other. And I'm also working to develop partnerships with multi-branch organizations and associations to help them bring more nonprofits into our new membership initiative, TechSoup. For those of you that don't know what TechSoup is, so we have a new membership initiative called Quad, but TechSoup has been around since we were formerly a nonprofit organization called Compumentor in San Francisco, and we've been TechSoup since the year 2000. We help nonprofits acquire and adopt and use appropriate technology to better achieve their missions. We do it through a number of different ways, and we have courses and products and a community and services and refurbished hardware and software for nonprofits. And our Quad membership is the thing that I'm working on. I'm happy to talk to you guys about it. So you would get kind of you would get like access to consulting and a community and special events and articles and templates, etc., for an annual charge of $200 for 10 users. I can tell you guys more about that later. You can email me. I am Susan at TechSoup, S10B at TechSoup, community at TechSoup, and easy to find. You can also hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm super responsive on all those on all those platforms. The AI hack that I think would be fun to share is some people try these AI image generators and they notice that the image isn't coming out the way they want. And so I learned that you can use an LLM of your choice to ask them what the best prompts would be. So you can have a conversation with, let's say, Gemini or ChatGPT or Copilot and say, how would I make this image better? And ask them, the LLM, to tell you the prompt to use in the image generation tool. So you don't have to come up with the prompts on your own.
That's great. That's awesome. Love
Yeah.
that. Cool. And you want to round us out, Eric?
Hey, Eric Martin. I am the executive director of Community Club. Community Club is a 501c6 nonprofit association for online community professionals. So super, super meta. But yeah, we work with community professionals in both for-profit companies, B2C, B2B, nonprofit. We also have folks who are working with offline communities, but all kinds of people work in community. And then professionally, I've also been was the first community manager at Reddit. Also worked for Nike, a bunch of other companies, and most recently was head of community for MidJourney, which is an AI. It's an AI image generator, one of the actual research labs and foundational models. So kind of was thrown into the deep end and forced to actually use a lot of the AI tools internally as well, because we were a really small team with a huge audience. So got to see stuff kind of from the inside, but have gone on to use AI in all sorts of places. One of the things I've been doing recently that's really, I don't know, kind of fun, and I think makes me a better sort of community leader, is running simulations. So with any of the, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, whatever, you can pretty easily run a simulation of your community. So you can say, hey, I want to run a simulation of my community. Just describe what you know about it. You can throw in demographics and the type of professions and profiles if you want. You don't need any private information or anything like that, but just kind of describe it. And then you can say, what type of format it is. Is it Slack? Is it Discord? Is it a message board? Is it text chat? Whatever. And then you can, then you can just sort of say, here, simulate the responses to this post. And with a little trial and error, you can get like a really interesting response. And, it's not going to be exactly the same, of course, but I feel like it helps me avoid, blind spots. And now I'm like, oh, there's no, why wouldn't I take 15 minutes to do this and really help me kind of think through what I'm about to share with, hundreds, thousands, whatever community members. Also just want to shout out, based in North Carolina. Saw a couple folks here from Alliance, Mission Ministries Alliance. So in North Carolina, great to be here.
Awesome. Thank you all for that. Super honored to have each of you here today. I think this is going to be some real fun conversation. Real quick, just simple housekeeping mention. The event is being recorded. So after this webinar today, you will get a recording of it, and we'll also provide some resources as we start talking about AI and what else is out there. This is kind of like the genesis of getting started, right? We're going to talk about that, but also it's so important to maintain and get a little more education. So we're going to supply you with some information to that extent. So with that, if you've got questions throughout, feel free to use the Q&A. And as we get toward the end of today's conversation, we'll go through and have a little Q&A session. But let's go ahead and kick this off. I think the first question to really have us dive into AI, I would love to know, maybe start with Susan here. What excites you most about the potential for AI in the nonprofit space, as you're like knee deep in this every day with different nonprofits?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it democratizes, small teams so that they don't need to, they can access powerful tools without a huge budget. I think that it's exciting because it helps nonprofits amplify their impact without needing a super techie team or like really being skilled up. And mostly, I think the most exciting thing is it's helping nonprofits tell their stories more effectively and reach new audiences. Like, so there's a small kind of volunteer 4-person nonprofit that I'm on the board of, and they had no idea how to tell their story, and they were struggling, and they didn't have budget for a writer or for someone to make a beautiful digital story, and now there are tools that do that. I would say the other element, I think, is for grant writing and fundraising. I think that AI does a great job for that. So, for example, tools like Grant Orb, and even just using a regular LLM like Perplexity AI, you can, with Perplexity AI, you can like put in, this is what my org does, this is how much budget we have right now, this is, this is how many people work for us, and this is where we're located, and this is what we do, which would be a good foundation for us to apply to. So for searching for grants as well as writing grants, I think AI is really very, very it's very productive for nonprofits.
Yeah, that's great. Such richness and depth there.
Yeah.
Rachel, who has been talking AI all morning, also,
Yes.
what's
It's a
exciting?
big conversation. There's a lot of pieces that we can touch on. And I think the thing that excites me most is the speed of innovation right now. I know the flip side of that is the fear, the overwhelm, all of those feelings that we bring to AI conversations. But we now have a tool that can take some of that busy work away and allow us to move towards more justice forward work, inclusive work, recentering relationship. And so I come from the world that advocates for trust-based philanthropy. How do we partner in ways that allow us to develop relationship and not spend so much time at our desks doing bureaucratic administrative work? And so I think that's the biggest opportunity for this tool. The other piece that Susan started pointing to is democratizing insight. Right. So one of the issues I've had in philanthropy is that there's a lot of box checking exercises, right? This metric, this head count, that head count, and now you'll get the money because it seems like you've checked those boxes. It's missing a whole lot of nuance. And that nuance is usually in the form of what's called qualitative data, right? As opposed to quantitative, easy to count. Qualitative are those stories, the stories of impact, the way people feel when they engage with your organization. That insight was previously pretty inaccessible. And so one of the conversations I'm leading for philanthropy right now is to look at those final reports that you have required for decades that I know program officers have not read, right? Take those reports, de-identify, right? Because we don't want to put the word out like this nonprofit is having problems with X, Y, and Z. We don't want it to be a critical tool. We want it to be a tool for understanding and learning. So by de-identifying, we're protecting and ensuring, if we're able to, get consent before we even engage in these conversations as philanthropies with power and privilege, but to collaborate with our nonprofit partners to lift up that qualitative insight. How do we sit around together and talk about what we're learning, what we're seeing? Because AI has already facilitated the digestion of the data. And so I think for me, that is the richest opportunity, is that as a sector, we have more space for relationship. We just need to get more innovative to figure out what do those tools look like that are going to power that relationship building.
Love that. It's a lot of depth there. Eric, what's exciting, most exciting to you?
I mean, I guess two things. One is just like, sort of big picture, like where no one's really an expert at this right now. It's all so new. It's moving so fast. Things change every few months, for better or for worse. But the positive side of that, yeah, is that with if you have curiosity and sort of a little bit of you have a few hours and you're determined to kind of keep going when you feel stuck a little bit and make it through, you can learn the sort of state of the art tools and methods and programs that are being used by anyone around the world. Like it's all there. It's pretty good. The sort of AI community and the people working at these companies and models, for the most part, are a lot of them come from the academic world. So they've published their, some of it's open source. They're used to talking about the methods and what they're finding and stuff. So you can learn quite a bit and get up to speed pretty quick. It is a little, you have to kind of translate the jargon and I'm a liberal arts person, so I have to sort of translate some of the technical stuff, but it's doable, and so that's exciting. And then just personally, what excites me is AI as a sort of thinking companion, thought partner. Like you can say, critique. Here's a draft of something I'm sending. Critique the heck out of this. What would someone who's extremely data driven say to this? What would someone who's, what would the CFO say to this? What would someone who's only concerned with the ROI say? How might someone in another part of the country that maybe, how might someone who's reading this on their phone while their kid is having a meltdown and they have 5 minutes to kind of get through this, what would stand out for them? So it just helps you sort of like test all this stuff and look at things from a bunch of different perspectives at once. And that's been really valuable for me, just kind of really understanding what is really here and how to make it better.
Yeah, I love the real world examples of kids, right? Kids and situations that you're in and being able to speak to that immediately.
Yeah, we always act like people are reading this in like a ideal, relaxed, pristine environment when they can really digest it and think about the stuff we're writing. But we know that's not the case. They're waiting for the bus, or they're in line at the grocery store, or they're in a meeting, in a Zoom webinar, reading it between responding to people. So I think it just helps kind of look at it from that angle too.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like it's hearing you from this standpoint, of hosting. It's like there's all of these different opinions here. There's the perspective of, it's new, right? And not everyone is really, the expert, but they're in a practice. They're in a practice of identifying and using it and being able to uh, share their own stories of how it's working for them. I can tell, like from some perspectives of talking with CBOs, for these last few months, it's sometimes it feels intimidating to them. And so, like with that kind of perspective of what's a realistic like first step for an organization to start exploring AI? Like, what is the first step? Where do they start? How do they make it less intimidating, a little bit easier?
Are you asking just any of us, or were you asking?
Yeah, any of
Okay.
you.
So I mean, I have I've thought about this one because at my organization, I was a little bit intimidated at the beginning, and then I kind of we have a Slack channel so I recommend an organization has kind of some sort of learning cohort environment for everybody to get their hands dirty, sandbox kind of thing. So we have it in Slack because our organization is very distributed. And I think just start with internal stuff that isn't going to have a huge impact. So start small. So for example, you can use free tools like ChatGPT or, or Claude or Gemini or Copilot. And like, here's an example. You look at your notes from a meeting, you took some handwritten notes. You can take a picture of those handwritten notes and say, summarize this and call out the salient points. And it will do that. It will understand the image of your handwritten notes and tell you where the to-dos are and what the summary points are. So things that are internal that are not going to have a huge impact if, there's no way you can mess up because it's internal. I think also creating social media posts, it creates a good rough draft, so it helps you there. It's not super high impact, like automating the newsletter or blog post, and then just thinking about it as a rough draft. And just so that you don't get writer's block, it kind of takes away the writer's block step, and then you just have stuff that you can work with to turn into your own voice, and it will start learning your own voice. Drafting emails. So those are some great places to start that are low impact. They're just they're just time saving, but wouldn't necessarily damage your org's reputation, and there's no way to mess up. Things to watch out for are hallucinations if you're new. So it can happen in images, like people with, you've heard about those things about people with 12 fingers or whatever else, that when you have, like, if I've had generative AI create a banner for an event, which I liked, except it had weird random words at the bottom, or the word community was misspelled. So then you can kind of go back and forth and say, use the correct spelling of, and you spell the word. So you'd have to watch out for hallucinations, but I would just say to keep it very internal first, just before you start doing stuff that's externally facing.
That's great.
Yeah, I think to piggyback on Susan's point, there are 4 areas I encourage folks to think about before diving into any AI project, and it's ethics, privacy, data, and security. And so anything you're doing with AI, those 4 words should float through your head: privacy, security, data, ethics, right? And thinking about who is going to be impacted, right? Not just thinking about it from your seat. And the easy example I share right now is, let's say your organization is ahead of the curve and you've got an internal policy and you've approved transcription services for your use in staff internal, right? You're okay with it. You go into a call with one of your partners and you're like, we're approved, we're going to click record. Did you talk to your partner about that? Did they provide consent? What are you doing with their data? Are they okay with that? Right? So really thinking about the stakeholders as you're diving into experimentation. So those are the heavy words. Where do we start? We start playing, just like Susan was saying. Start with your human resources manual, right? Start with something really dry and boring where there are, low issues for risk or, compliance missteps or brand blow ups. Like, don't go there yet. Microsoft came out with a statistic. It takes 10 to 15 minutes a day of AI practice to get really good at using this tool. And so if every day you can find some reason to hop in, here's a picture of my refrigerator, tell me what we can cook for dinner, right? And so just finding those use cases in your own personal life so you can play before you move into enterprise organization where there is brand reputation that you need to be really careful and mindful of. And to Susan's point, hallucinations are real. Large language models really aim to please. And that means that they might make things up. And you can think about, like, if you had a graduate student working in your office over the summer, right? They might be like, oh, I found this research. Let's check that research. And so one of the things I recommend as you're beginning to play, and not just playing about what do I cook for dinner, what do I wear today, but playing at work, is to stay close to your zone of genius, right? So what is your zone of genius? What are you really good at? And so I think as you begin to experiment and play, it's going to be a lot easier for you to fact check, to know that something is untrue, to recognize that I need to prod that quote a little bit. And that's how you end up protecting your brand, right? Your reputation out there. But that's why I start with the low stakes issue. And so for the HR example, say there was some legal piece of information that came out that needs to get updated in your HR manual. You would take your HR manual. Again, you can take the org name out or not, because it's really not that high stakes. Keep your organization safe, take the org name out. take that legal information that probably lives on the internet somewhere, right? You can PDF it, you can screenshot it, you can point to the URL. You put those two pieces of information into your ChatGPT and you say, how do I incorporate this new legalese into my employee guidance? And that's a really easy place to start playing.
Let me ask this question real quick, just because you both mentioned hallucinations, and hallucinations defined as AI is saying something that doesn't exist or it's being made up. Is there anything that you say in your prompts to make sure that it doesn't say that, or that you say to check if it is real or a hallucination? That's for anyone.
I would exactly what you just said is what I would tell it basically.
Okay.
Like when you can even say like, hey, when you're done, take a pause, like reflect. Like I try to make it fun, just to have a coffee and then think about, is everything in there, real? And you can add, and there's some evidence that with some models this helps. You can say like, I'm gonna get fired if there's something fake in this, or like if there's something fake in this, a monster will eat my pet cat or something. Like but basically what you said, like, hey, this is really important. It's important for me in my job, or it's important for the for the mission that we're trying to advance. So be really careful and double check everything, or if you're in doubt, don't include it. And all these models, and I can say this as someone who was working inside one of these companies, they are all trying, and trying to make the input as natural language as possible. In the early days of AI, which is like 18 months ago, 2 years ago, whatever, but not that long ago, there was more, you had to kind of use more complex languages and put things in a certain way, almost like you were, sort of writing code in English. But all of them are trying, and so it's only gonna get more like this. All of them are trying to, basically make it so you can talk to it like you would talk to a person, right? So just say what, and a lot of them even have voice to text. So just use that. I think that's going to be better than just about anything.
Hey, Eric, I'd like to ask you one question specific.
Yeah.
You came from an AI company that is geared toward images. Like, what's some of the most creative things that you've seen, even like from the nonprofit or, extending beyond that people are using AI for?
Yeah. So one of the most interesting things I've seen with MidJourney, but there's a lot of good image generation models out there, was an architecture firm. And so what they would do is they would just do like basically rapid prototyping on a absurd scale. So they would say, okay, we're designing an apartment building. Here's a picture of the block that we're designing it on. What would it look like if Nike designed an apartment building here? What would it look like if Prada designed an apartment building here? What would it look like if like Mayor so-and-so designed a building here? And just like they do like 100 of these and really quick, and then think about like, okay, well, do any of these work, right? Like, and then try to almost like work they call it sort of reverse engineering, like why does this one work even though the prompt was absurd, right? Like imagining that. I think especially visuals really help us think about our future selves, the future of our communities. So, hey, here's my town. What might it look like in the future? What might it look like? Here's a picture of it now. What might it look like in 20 years? Those sorts of references, I think, really help us when we're trying to think long term, which is hard for humans to do. But so I've seen it used like that. And then I just think playing. I think sort of creating images and the speed that you can do it, it just helps you get into a creative headspace. So I've heard a lot of people, writers, if they kind of hit writer's block, they'll just start like, making images of their characters or the scene they're trying to describe. I've heard people doing it, the whole team of designers will do it for 5 minutes before an important meeting, just to kind of, sort of like you do the same with drawing or anything, but I think, AI stuff's on our laptops or staring at all day. So just kind of fun and playing, I think, is the biggest.
That's great. Thank you for that. Anyone else want to chime in about creativity? Otherwise, we can move
I
over to
I
tools.
just want to say really quickly, Susan, I'm so impressed with that example. And then my brain likes to go down rabbit holes, right? So now I'm on that architectural example and it's like, does it work? Well, I'm like, I would have uploaded the New York City specs on how things must get built, right? What's the rules? What's the regulations, right? And then back to that hallucination question, or is this accurate question? I would say, what's missing? Oh, well, we need the plumbing specs, or we need the sewage hookup information, right? And like now you're really moving with that project. You went from ideation to, okay, we've landed on an idea and now we're going to keep going with it. And so I think it's an incredible example because you can imagine how quickly you're able to go from idea to prototype to being able to come up with that final product.
Yeah, and I just wanted to chime in. Earlier, I wasn't able to respond to everyone, but now I am. So I put in some links, but I also wanted to respond to the question about social media, just because I am a social media person and that's part of my job and my side hustles. So it's like kind of what I do every day. You can use Canva to create images. Canva's great and it's great for social media, has AI capabilities. But truly, you can use any LLM and say, like, my preference is Copilot, but you know, that's just because it's what I have in front of me. But all of them will do this. If you say create a social media post using appropriate hashtags and a few emojis with my organization's brand voice about this link, it will do it. And again, just remember that it's a rough draft. So it'll be quicker. So for example, I can do that for, let's say, an event coming up, a conference, and then I would look at it and it would take me 3 minutes to create the post instead of 15 or 20 because I don't have to come up with the base language of the post. And then I can tweak the post and just remembering it's a rough draft and make it exactly as I want. But you can just write me a social media post, including appropriate hashtags and emojis about this, and it will do that.
What about final stuff? Because like, I'm seeing these questions too pop in here. You know, people want to know like how do they create more social media? And you're saying it's great for a rough draft. Can they use AI to actually create the final as well and download it and post
Well,
it?
you can say, okay, here's an example of that. So we've at TechSoup, you know, we have lots of partners. I mean, any organization does, but we have many partners for the events we put on. And I often will send them a social media sharing kit to make the social media sharing easy for them. And I'll put the draft of here's 4 posts on this sharing kit. Can you enhance this or make them shorter, for example? And so you can put in a draft, or even with grant writing, you can put in a grant draft and say, can you update this using current stats and make it a little bit more succinct? So you can also upload drafts. And with like Notebook LLM, you can upload entire texts and say, write me a blog post based on this book. And you can, and it will do that as well.
That's a great mention of Notebook LLM. I don't know
Yeah.
if you have experience with this as well, Rachel. I would love for you to talk a little bit about that and like the nonprofit space. So, like, what does that actually mean for them? Because I don't think people really have heard of that one.
Yeah, Notebook is a really great tool. I don't use it as much as I would like to because it's for me, it's a deep research tool. And so I go in there when I want to compile different pieces of information and kind of start getting my thought leadership rolling on a new topic, right? So one of the introductory projects I did was actually on climate and AI. And so one of the issues I bumped up against was it was a 2-hour YouTube video on the climate change AI folks, right? Like he was there presenting at UPenn. I was like, I don't have 2 hours to listen to this. And so I was able to upload all of this information into Notebook LM and it digested it for me, right? The YouTube video, the articles from MIT, Harvard Business School think about what's happening with climate change, other things that the climate change AI group had written. And it was because I was getting that question a lot. I was like, I need to have a point of view. I need to have something to speak to on this front. And so Notebook LM allowed me to do that research really quickly. It was able to digest a 2-hour YouTube video and create like a briefing document to tell me what happened in that particular piece. It was able to create comparisons between, what is MIT saying, what is Harvard saying, and I was able to do a really deep dive on some robust information, and Notebook LM helped craft what my thinking is now around climate change. And I'm sure this is a concern for all of you. So where I landed on climate change after doing all of this research is that it really depends on how we're using the tool. What's the end game? If the end game is to anticipate where we're going to have drought, or do some piloting of, crop rotation or whatever it is, AI is going to help synthesize that data a lot faster than all the PhD academics on those projects could. And so it's really helpful for climate change mitigation. However, we do have the problem of the platforms and the lack of regulation that AI is currently running on. And so again, I talk about it as a trade-off. I'm going to use the AI if it's driving me where I need it to go. And so that analogy carries for me, just like a car, right? You can get really into car culture. You can love your car. You can, know all the things about it, just like AI. You can get really overwhelmed and, sucked into those conversations, or you can decide I'm going to use this tool when and how I need it to get me where I need to go a little bit quicker. So great question. Notebook LM, check it out. Really cool tool. The other one I wanted to ping was Perplexity, which is another really powerful research tool to be able to go in and synthesize information. Notebook LM has the podcast functionality, which is also really handy. But back to Eric's point, you have to think about what's the life your people are living to be able to access that information. And so for me, I have a lot of distractions and a lot of things going on. So my ears are not often available for podcasts, right? So that functionality wasn't that helpful for me, but it's a really neat capability that lives in Notebook LM.
Yeah, I love the idea there of, from one, people look at it a lot as your own information, but the really cool thing about these large LLMs is you can look at research of other people's organizations and bringing that in to get the message that you're getting at, or the research you need for any of your papers or research or blogs that you want to put out there. So that's pretty spectacular. You did mention too the podcast feature. I don't know if people have heard of this. Does anyone want to speak to that? I've made my own podcast of like just information I want to listen to when I'm traveling, so I don't have to read it all. Has anyone else used that feature?
I haven't used it, but I'm aware that that you can pay $20 and have the Notebook LLM do that, but I haven't actually done it yet.
Yeah, so it's like prepping for meetings, or if you have a speech somewhere, you get to listen to it, while you're traveling and just have all that information there, your emails. Um, it's such a great preparation tool.
And you know what's crazy, John, is there's even inbuilt bias there, right? So someone pointed out that often it's the woman who's asking the question and the male voice is the one that's answering it with all the facts and pieces. And so I think, our role as the end user is to notice it, right? To pay attention to where this bias is popping up. And so again, being mindful that we are getting from our large language models a white Western male lens because those tools ate the internet. And so everything that lives in the internet is the slant that we're going to get. And so to be aware of it, again, doesn't mean you don't use the tool. It just means that you're mindful of what lens the tool is going to be giving you.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, like as you mentioned, like hallucinations. It's like, what bias are you presenting this in and getting that answer? That's super interesting to hear those types of things. What about, I'd love to like jump into like simple like use cases, from the nonprofit, like what are some use cases that they might want to use this for? And we've already mentioned a couple things like fundraising. Are there any others or any depth you want to go into about fundraising that people are using these for?
Well, I mean, I know that they're using it to write grants and to find the right grant makers. So those are two uses. It's also pretty good for strategic planning. So an organization can put in their mission and what they hope to do and have some LLM help them with their strategic plan and come up with new ideas and ways to present their mission or to manage volunteers. Like, okay, these are the volunteers we have, these are their skills, these are our needs. What do you think? And the tools will do that. Do others have ideas?
Yeah, I think beyond the writing part, it's helpful in developing the checklist, assigning different pieces of the proposal, right? Even before you start writing, are we aligned? Right? Take your strat plan, take your URL, right? Your nonprofit URL, take the RFP as a PDF or as a URL, put it in ChatGPT. Are these two things aligned?
Mhm.
Oh, we're only looking for Colorado nonprofits in this particular ask. Okay, good. I don't have to waste my time, first of all, reading the 30 pages, right? Like I just saved myself a lot of time and then digging through to see if there's alignment. So without even moving to the writing part, there's so much that these tools can do to help save you time and find some efficiency.
I'm liking what Kristen's saying here as well, to shorten grants and reports when there's a character limit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think too, I mean, you can even put in the RFP, put in the draft, outline, notes, whatever you have, and just say, assume I get rejected. You know, what are the reasons? What would be the most likely reasons that this doesn't make it through? Also, if somewhat related, most of the large LLMs can help you practice, you know, giving a pitch too. Like you can actually record yourself speaking or record a video and you know, ask it for feedback. You can ask it in real time to propose questions or propose questions, you know, async too. But they do a pretty good job of that, of saying like, what might a reviewer have? What questions might they have? How could I preempt those questions or answer them in the original thing?
Yeah, and I'll just like add on to that, just like the specifics are everything, you know, setting up that persona of who you want or who you expect to be replying back to things. You can even put the actual organization and a title there just to get specific, you know, information back. Uh, I would love to move over to ethics.
Mhm.
It's one of those like key topics. If you ever Google anything, you know, or do a search about AI and nonprofits, the very first thing that comes up is ethics. Um, what are some things you know, in the topic of ethics that nonprofits should be thinking about?
Well, you should definitely make sure that you're not stealing the work of others. That's huge. And then also that you're not including personal identifying information. So you might think that, you know, you have a volunteer, you have a volunteer, so you're going to give them some feedback, but you don't realize that the performance review that you're about to give them is in a file with staff performance review and salary information. So you got to make sure that when you include a link, that it doesn't have any sort of link to an external drive, a Google Drive, for example, because you can be accidentally revealing personal identifying information. When you upload spreadsheets, same thing, strip out all PII. Those are just some ways to start. And then you want to also always review for accuracy to the point of hallucinations before you publish anything. And then, of course, the bias piece that Rachel spoke about.
Yeah, I'll throw in this question, and this is for Rachel. It's on the same topic, but it's, you know, so many nonprofits and CBOs work with personal information. They've got that PII right, and even health-related information. So, like when it comes to privacy, HIPAA, data security, how do you know which tools to use and which not to use?
Yeah, I think it's less about the tool and it's more about what data you're putting in, because all of these tools, as far as I can tell, are for profit at this point. And that means that we have really different end games, right? And so if their end game is profit, at some point, our data that we're putting into these tools might fuel that mission. And we need to be really mindful that that is their goal. Our goal as social impact organizations is to take care of communities. And so one of the greatest areas we can show that care is by asking for consent, by assuring our partners that we're doing the best we can to keep information private. And so by keeping information private, one of the very simple examples I share is if you're pulling information from a database and it has personally identifying information, PII, you want to have two versions of that spreadsheet. The one spreadsheet you keep for your own audit purposes, right? It's got the names, it's got the birthdays, it's got all that information. It's internal, it's in-house, it stays in your world, right? On your desktop, in your SharePoint, whatever that is. It doesn't go over to the language model. Before you put that information, the other spreadsheet, you're going to delete their name. You're going to delete their birthday. You don't need those columns. What you're looking for isn't how much is Mr. Smith going to give next year? Or does that particular youth need an intervention? Or does that state X, Y, or Z, right? You don't need to have it at that level of nuance. What you want is some general insight. What is happening with youth? How are these policies affecting this group of people in this state, right? And so you're looking for general insight. You're not looking for specific information about what one person may or may not do, because that's getting you into really risky hot water if you are trying to make predictions about individuals. What we're generally trying to do is figure out, where do we put our energy? How do we plan a gala that people are going to show up to, right? How do we make sure that we're getting the insight from the tool and not putting in sensitive, personally identifying information that is going to get you into brand and reputation hot water? I also want to let you know, we're not going to be the first folks to make the mistake either. Samsung engineers already made that mistake. Samsung put proprietary information into a large language model. Samsung had to shut down any large language models, ChatGPT specifically, while they upskilled their staff and explained about the ethical boundaries, the proprietary boundaries of how we use data. And so if in doubt, just redact it. Just take the proper name out, take any personally identifying information out. And this also goes back to the early days of social media, right? We did not put information out there that we did not want the world to see. Same thinking with the large language model. And we'll go on a journey. We used to not tell people on social media, or we were advised not to tell people that we're going on vacation, right? Someone's going to break into your house. Don't put it out there. Okay, so that's where we are with AI right now, right? It's going to be silly in a couple of years how careful we were, perhaps. But I think it's really important to be that cautious in this moment when we're dealing with communities that are already at risk.
That was great. You know, to that end, having these different, I guess, boundaries, right, of what we do. How do you get your team, not just your own person, to um, have some different guidelines? Like, what's a process for that? I mean, I think that's for everyone on the call today.
Yeah, I mean, you should really work with senior leadership to create an AI usage policy. Every org should have one. We have one. You should have some play days and like workshops, kind of jam days where you all practice. And you should also know that a lot of these smaller startup tools are not as safe as the bigger tools in terms of so you should be very careful, like have one of your security professionals if you have a security IT person, audit the tool before you start using it, because you don't actually know. I mean, the bigger tools are safer. So not that the smaller tools are unsafe, but you should at least have some sort of security audit from your internal IT person to make sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, right? It's just getting permission to actually use these because they can be dangerous, right, to the organization. Yeah, thank you for that.
I think one of the most important things to do is, Susan pointed to this a little bit, but it's not just senior leadership, it's cross-departmental, right? Those use cases are bubbling up all across the organization. And so, yes, you need senior leadership to kind of steer the ship and figure out what's inbounds and what's out of bounds. But if you're not talking about it as an organization, there are pieces that are slipping through the cracks. And that's where the danger is. And so making sure that you're starting with play, right? It's kind of like a three-prong approach that I advocate for, and it's play, right? Like figure out what to wear today, figure out what to cook for dinner, like do all of those fun, silly use cases. When it comes into your organization and now there's an enterprise play happening, you need a policy. You need a policy pretty quickly so everyone's on the same page and you know what data is inbounds and what's out of bounds. The longer journey is the change management journey, because that's going to be updated job descriptions. That's updated, responsibilities with data. So I think there is a longer journey ahead for us, but the first step is creating that cross-departmental team.
Maybe anything to add to that, Eric?
I just think it's helpful and a little scary, to be honest, to think about what this might look like in 10 years and talk about that with your peers, with your senior leadership, with folks who are interested, really talk it through. And none of us are going to be right, but I think it helps to, this is a pretty massive change, and will affect all kinds of stuff some that we predict and know about, and some that we don't. So just being able to talk, like what might this look like in 5 years? If it does have a massive change, how might that affect our organization? Just that's something good to talk about frequently, just so that you're thinking ahead, and when it comes time to have those sort of enterprise play things, you have at least a thought of what it might look like in the long term, or the medium term. So some of those are hard conversations, but hopefully just talking them through can make it a little less scary, and without make sure you're figuring out how to get to where you want to go, instead of just reacting to new things that are coming.
Yeah, I think as we round out today, we've got lots of different pieces here. The exciting parts, the cool tools we can use, the thought partner, and there's also, like this beware of what you use. Like, what would you say to give some encouragement to these nonprofit leaders as they embrace and start using AI?
I
Rachel?
think start small, right? Like that HR manual example, like start with something small and simple. Start with what I call the pile of dirty laundry, right? In philanthropy, that's the reports that program officers are not reading. Like maybe start looking at that and learning from that. So I think figuring out where your mission hurts the most, right? Like where are you feeling those points of friction? That's probably a good place to think about plugging in AI, and then just start small.
And I would say listen to as many webinars as you can. There's like a webinar every day on this. Just start, and use it every day. I use it every day. I use it instead of Google at this point. Like just start using it every day for everything, and you'll get more used to it. But also just listen to webinars on different generative AI use cases and topics, because you'll just absorb it that way. There's also I'm actually going to be attending this. Heather Mansfield runs from NP Tech for Good, runs a AI for nonprofits kind of boot camp with a certification. And it's happening in July, and I just signed up for it. It's like $159. It's very, very cheap, and she's awesome. And so I included an article of hers earlier, but I think it's not a bad idea to kind of skill up in that way. At TechSoup, we have skill centers, but just really to start using it every single day.
Yeah, and I would say, for your own personal sort of development and curiosity, itch scratching, try to use it to help you learn something, right? Like it could be something directly related to your work, it could be something tangential, but just really try to go down the rabbit holes on something. Could be something about a trip you're having soon, or could be something you want to share with a relative or friend, something they're interested in, you could quickly learn about, and just really try to, I don't know. There's never been, as far as I know, a better sort of like curiosity, sort of enhancer. Like I use the Google Gemini voice to text thing in the car, and I just like have a conversation with it about whatever, and like it's just fun to be able to use and explore all that stuff. And I think like we've all said, the more you play with it just in your personal life and almost for entertainment, I think the more you'll be sort of equipped to think about it in some of the more important work you're doing for your respective missions.
I think as a closing thing, I would love it if you would just share like your top 2 or 3 AI tools that you use.
I mean, for me, Copilot is number one. I use Copilot for everything. Canva has a lot of AI in it. I use Canva all the time, and what they have made very easy is amazing. And I'm a big fan of Perplexity AI.
Great.
Yeah, ChatGPT is my go-to. I've been joking that it was an intern last year and now it's a first year professional. Because I think the work you put into training it. So the other example around the social media, you can put your whole brand kit in there and say, these are the colors we use. This is the, type font we use, and you're on your way. So the time you invest in your platform, and Susan, it sounds like it's Copilot. If you love Claude or Gemini, like invest the time in that large language model and you will see wonderful results. I also love using Gamma. That is a favorite, but I don't have Gamma develop the slide outline. I do that in ChatGPT, right? Like what content do I need it to present? What order do I want it in? I work really robustly in ChatGPT, getting it how I want it, and then take it over to Gamma and say, here's the outline, generate it. So between those two, that's probably most of my work. I'd love to spend more time in Notebook LLM because it is such a powerful research tool, and I consider myself a researcher. So if anyone has a topic that you want to dig into, I'm happy to give you a demo on Notebook LM, and you can go deep and wide.
Thank you. Eric.
Yeah, for me, it's Claude. I mean, I think in general, all the large ones are have their strengths and weaknesses, but they're all pretty good. I like Claude too. They say they don't use any of your input or output in their training data. Whether you trust them on that, it's up to you. But they're very adamant about saying that, at least. I also like there's more of a utilitarian thing, but a tool called Cora, Cora. It's like an email, just makes email a little easier to manage. More for personal. I haven't used it for any sort of enterprise things, but just for personal Gmail, it works pretty well. But yeah, Claude's pretty great for everything.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, this has been a great session. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all attendees. Thank you all panelists. And as a follow-up, we'll send an email, and each of these speakers will give us some links to share, to help you on your journey. And we also have a couple of other AI webinars coming up. One next month on real stories, practical solutions, how CBOs are using AI today. And then in August, we've got one on AI equity and the future of social impact. So we hope you'll join us. And thank you for coming today. Thank you, panelists. This has been great.
Thank you so much.